Hi, I'm Roy Collin, the host of the podcast. You can find everything about me by scanning the QR code there or going to roycollin.com, and you'll find my 6 podcasts: the Podfather, helping people become podcasters; the Awakening, exposing fraud and corruption but with solutions; the Crypto, all things blockchain technology; meditation podcast; speaking podcast; and the Learn Polish podcast. You can also help the show by actually making a donation, visiting the store, or helping my sponsors. I hope you enjoyed this week's show. Welcome to the Awakening Podcast. You can find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. My guest is a doctor of physical therapy, certified functional medicine practitioner, diplomate with the American Clinical Board of Nutrition, founder of DrSarahDoyle.com, creator of the 7X Method Biohacking Bootcamp, co-founder and principal clinician of HealWell Regenerative Institute in Miami Beach, and author of The Tin Formula and the 7X Method. Please welcome Dr. Sarah Doyle.
Hi, Roy. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, looking forward to this because I see a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. I mean, I suppose let's kind of learn a bit more about yourself first, because like with the qualifications that I've just called out, you might kind of tell us your own kind of journey, how you got into the studying and how your kind of thinking changed into what you're kind of doing now.
Sure. Well, when I was 22, I was prescribed an antibiotic and it made me really sick. Like I thought I had Crohn's disease. I developed all these food allergies, which I still deal with now, 22 years later. So I got into health and wellness early just to try to heal myself. And this was before we really had the internet to look for things. Like I had to read books. And so my journey started then, and I became a massage therapist while I was in physical therapy school. And I was just coaching people on nutrition. I didn't even know health coaching was a thing, but I was just naturally doing it. I got my doctorate of physical therapy from FIU in Miami, and I worked in hospitals. Most people don't know, but physical therapists teach people how to walk after they've had a near-death experience. Nobody goes to the hospital unless they think they're going to die. So I would work with people after they had a major brain injury, a spinal cord injury, heart attack, aneurysm, a gunshot wound. I loved ICU trauma. I got stuck. My godfather got sick with lung cancer. And I ended up getting a job at the hospital where he was under care, and he died in the middle of my shift. And I ended up working in oncology because all the oncologists, they became close to me because I was one of their patients. And oncologists, we'd say chemo is a demon. It does do really terrible things to the body. I witnessed it. But I will tell you that oncologists are usually there because they lost somebody to cancer, and they're really passionate. The oncologist called me at 10 p.m. and he's like, hey, he checked on me. He would check on me. If I saw him in the hallway, he would always pull me aside and see how I was doing. So I ended up working in the oncology unit. So that's kind of the epitome of how big pharma can destroy people, and how poor nutrition and poor decisions throughout your lifetime will lead you down. I saw a bunch of workaholics. I sat there with people and I, helped them with their estate planning because they weren't going to make it much longer. So that really shook me and made me think about, well, there's got to be another way, because people would always ask me in the hospital, how can they send me home? They don't know what's wrong with me. They're just giving me more prescriptions. Isn't there anything I can do? And I was like, I know there is. I know they're sick because of vitamin and mineral deficiencies, but we weren't taught this in school. So fast forward to the pandemic. At first, I was furloughed. And when COVID first happened, people were going to the ER and they were just intubating everybody, right? I don't know if you remember that. They were then we couldn't find enough ventilators and this and that. Well, so when somebody is intubated for a prolonged period of time, their throat is dilated and it disrupts the swallowing reflex. Well, you can't send somebody home if they can't eat. They can't eat if they can't swallow. So all of the therapy budget was going towards speech therapists, which teach people how to swallow. So physical therapists were sitting at home I sat at home for 3-4 months. So I took this opportunity, instead of just binge watching Netflix, I took the opportunity to do an accelerated program, and I got the functional medicine certification. And then I went back to work in COVID ICU, and that was the nail in the coffin, no pun intended. But, I was I've had enough of watching people die. And so I just went full time with my coaching program, and I ended up specializing in women's hormones, women's health. I don't know how it is in Europe, but in the United States, an OBGYN which is the obstetrician gynecologist, the vagina doctor. She delivers babies, does all that stuff, has very little education on menopause. And perimenopause is like a second puberty, and women spend 30% of their life in menopause, and their body's dramatically different. And same thing with men in andropause. As they get in their 60s and their testosterone drops, they're also, it's like another puberty, and our bodies change. So that's been my specialty as a coach. And then I wrote the 7X method. We can dive into that in another question, but that's like me in a nutshell. That was my path. I got sick. I started teaching people how to be better. I worked in trauma ICU, loved it. COVID ICU gave me anxiety and panic attacks, and it pushed me into, I think it's really great because I can serve people in underserved areas, using a telehealth model. I can go into remote cities and help people who would have to drive 100 miles to see a holistic doctor. People who their primary care doctor or the American medical system is failing them, and it's more meaningful, and it's obviously I'm passionate about it.
Like, I'm just curious. I mean, you've worked in the hospital, and it's something that I find frustrating. I mean, we know that when we're ill, the best thing that you can do is actually sleep to, recuperate. But they wake you up at 6 a.m, they have lights on, and it's just constant. They don't let you sleep. They feed you with the crappiest of food. And also, this is something I just learned recently, but like 100 years ago or whatever, apparently linen is better for recovery, and they took that out as well. And like, why are they doing? It's like they're trying to keep you sick or whatever. I mean, we know that from the medical industry anyway. But it's like, if you just look at simple things like that just healthy food in a hospital, like, it's crap. And I mean, I'm talking from even when I was younger, like that, and it's got worse.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the Bible says to use linen, right? God told us everything we need to know. And not only that, but the radiation. So as a side note, because I post on Instagram all the time. So I've got one of those like little EMF detectors when I was in the hospital, and I was like, I wanted to see how much Wi-Fi, how much radiation is inside the ICU. It's like off the charts. Like, I was the front seat of your car, lots of radiation. I was sitting at the nurse station where all the computers and all the monitors are, tons of radiation. Inside the ICU, horrible, because there's all those monitors around. So you have all that EMF, which agglutinates the cells, make your red blood cells stick together. So if they're stuck together, they can't carry as much oxygen. So you become more hypoxic. I mean, death is hypoxia, right? So it's yeah, you're right.
And like, I assume it's the same in the States, but what I see in Poland is all these 5G towers. Not only are they in schools, but they're all in hospitals. So like, the last place they should be is on a hospital, but that's where they put them. So, it just shows the powers that be what they're doing.
Yep, exactly.
So there's the one story on one of the shows that you were on, and you were talking about a young girl, I don't know, was she 10 or something like that, 8 or 10, and it was because of creams with the parents. You might just touch on that, because I thought that was fascinating.
Yes, I actually had a patient yesterday. I was looking at her blood work, same thing. Okay, so I was on a podcast talking about a case study where I read it was like an 8-year-old girl. She was acting up in school, and her parents took her from doctor to doctor, finally took her to a functional medicine doctor who thought to test the kid for hormones. So both the parents, the father was using testosterone cream and the mother was using estrogen cream. And I mean, it absorbs, but it's also still in the skin, and it comes out in the sweat. So what they found in this poor little girl, her behavioral problems were all due to having sky high hormone levels, like having adult level testosterone and estrogen in an 8-year-old body. And it's wild. So, the injectables, or like the estrogen patch or testosterone injections, they don't tend to do that as much. But I had a client yesterday, I was reviewing her blood work and her father's blood work, and he had low T. They were injecting him. He was like, testosterone for a man is supposed to be between 300 and 1,000. His was 2,000. And then her as a female, hers was it was 100 and it should be under 50. I was like, because he's got Parkinson's. So she's constantly picking him up. She's sharing a bed with him, this and that. I was like, you got to stop. You got to stop injecting your dad. Let that come down. I was like, he's overloaded and the testosterone's literally coming out everywhere. It comes out like in saliva, like everything. So, it's called passive transfer. And
just on that, because I actually had a guest on yesterday, it hasn't been released yet, but he's written a book on testosterone, and like with the injections, because your natural producing the testosterone then just disappears. So when you stop doing the injections, it drops dramatically. Is that the way it works?
Yeah, let me see if I can explain it. So you have the pituitary in your brain. The pituitary is like your master gland that tells all your other glands what to do. And they do this through chemical signaling, right? Your body's always, there's all these things called feedback loops, positive feedback loops, negative feedback loops. So for a male, the pituitary will send a hormone to the testes to say, hey, make testosterone, make testosterone. Well, if you are injecting for 1 to 2 years, like if you're injecting for 2 years, that feedback loop between the pituitary and the testes has been broken, because every day the pituitary is like, oh, okay, I'm not getting any signal. We have plenty of testosterone. Don't need to tell you to work. And that the testes are like retired, and it's really hard to turn it back on. I talked about this in other podcasts as well. Is that so? The major problem we have right now is with all the plastics, the phthalates. I have men who are in their 30s with really low testosterone levels. And, they will see their buddies in the gym, or they see an advertisement online and they start injecting testosterone and they feel better. But then, they want to start a family down the line, and it's really hard to turn those testes back on. So, and there's a whole nother rabbit hole. Like, I've seen these testosterone, like order TRT, $49.99 a month. Like, you should never inject anything into your body on a discount. And it's poorly monitored. You can inject testosterone and not destroy your fertility, but you have to have a doctor that's got close supervision that monitors the downstream metabolites like estrogen conversion, so you don't get man boobs, and then also manage the feedback loops with some other peptides. So it can be done, but for the most part, it's pretty high risk. If anybody wants to start a family, I would, and I do this in my coaching program, as I teach people how to do it naturally. We use herbs, we remove toxins. I see a lot of plastics, the glyphosate from the pesticides. I know that's banned in Europe, but in the United States, the lobbyists are still winning on that one. So we still have heavy amounts of pesticides, and those are also they're called xenoestrogens. So they're like estrogen. It's not quite like if estrogen's a key, a xenoestrogen is a pretty close copy, but not exactly. And that's what all these pesticides and plastics are. And so the liver gets bombarded and prioritizes getting this garbage out instead of prioritizing like getting rid of the other estrogens. And so like I'm seeing men with high estrogens, the gynecomastia, erectile dysfunction, and that's usually accompanied by low T.
So I know that you do like a comprehensive DNA test. Does that test for testosterone and all the different things, or what exactly does it test for?
I do a urine test of the sex hormones and stress hormones. So those are called steroid hormones. Steroid hormones come from cholesterol. So this is another thing I hate about mainstream healthcare, is that a man needs a good, robust 230, even a 250 cholesterol score. Now doctors are like, oh, cardiovascular disease, let's take a statin, let's get you below 200. But your body makes cholesterol. LDL cholesterol plays important roles. It converts into vitamin D, which everything needs vitamin D. I mean, we learned that during the pandemic, how important that was, right? And then LDL cholesterol also converts into a precursor substance called pregnenolone. So pregnenolone, depending on what your pituitary or your hypothalamus says in your brain, if you have a lot of stress, your body will convert the pregnenolone to cortisol. If you don't have a lot of stress, you just have a good, well-balanced life, well-balanced outlook on life, right? We can't control our life, but we can control our perception. So if you have that, then the pregnenolone gets diverted to sex hormones. So in my test, I can see where the precursor substance is going. I can see which enzymes are dominant, like the 5-alpha reductase pathway, the 5-beta reductase pathway. So that's important in looking at different conversions. And then I also test for estrogens and estrogen metabolites. So years before cancer begins, we can find a buildup of these toxic estrogens, 4-hydroxyestrone and 16-hydroxyestrone. So I look at these metabolites, which you can't get from blood work. That's why I love doing urine panels, because I can see the enzymes. I can see it just gives me a lot more insight. So that's one of the tests I do. I do a DNA test. That's a buccal swab, and that will check for different. DNA tests won't check for diseases, but it will check for each gene has a role to play. Each gene will make an enzyme. So if we look at these genes, and there's we call it a single nucleotide polymorphism, an SNP. So if we see that this gene has a little defect, then we can supplement for that. So we can use therapeutic levels of pharmaceutical grade nutraceuticals, vitamins, minerals, herbs, amino acids, and that can help compensate for our genetic defects. I love the DNA test because we can narrow down. We only take what we need. I was the same way before I got functional medicine certified. I read about a vitamin. I was like, oh, that's good for me. I should take coenzyme Q10. Like, oh, ashwagandha, that's good for stress. I should take that. And I would take it and then, buy a bottle and never buy it again. It was just total haphazard based on marketing, right? So when we do a DNA test, we can really dial down what your body actually needs. And then when we combine that with the hormone test, we can see, okay, what age-related or toxin-related changes do we have? And then I also do a brain chemistry test where people don't even know this. You can submit a urine sample and find out what your serotonin levels, dopamine levels are, norepinephrine, epinephrine, glutamate, all these things, right? And so testosterone and dopamine interact, estrogen and serotonin interact. So I attack everything at the same time. And that's why people can feel incredible within 30 days, because we look at the whole body. So the problem with the medical model that we work with now and the medical model that we're conditioned to think is that it's very reductionist. And so by reductionist, I mean, we only look at one thing at a time. The cardiologist only looks at the heart. The endocrinologist only looks at the diabetes, pathology, and we don't function like that. So that's what functional medicine doctors do. They look at everything and look at the root cause, and then that's a really long way to answer your question.
No, but it's relevant.
So the DNA gives us clues to your predictability to develop disease, and we can hedge against that with lifestyle and nutrition and supplement modifications, right?
So with the DNA, then where is that tested in your own place or what? Because the reason I'm saying it is there was 23andMe, and there was the other one as well. I forget the name of the girl, but apparently they've sold all the information, and there's the fear then that your DNA is actually sold on to the bad boys or whatever. And I mean, not everything is like that, but I'm just curious with how it's tested and how people's kind of data is protected.
Yes, the lab I use is just like if you were to go and get any other test. If you were to get your blood work done with a doctor, it's like saying, oh, okay, in the United States, we have Quest, we have LabCorp. Those are the two dominant franchises. So that's like saying, oh, LabCorp is going to sell your data to the health insurance company. Well, no, we use a little lab, and this is what they do. I know that it's a shame what happened with that hack. Yeah. I know I was I had my DNA there too.
And is it something great? Because I mean, I know I've got 50+% in my listeners in the States. Is this something that's only for the States, or is it international? That because I believe, because I saw you doing a video and it was like you get the swabs for the thing. I know you're on about the urine, that's kind of different, but say the blood thing and things like that. Is that something that can be done internationally, or is just for the States?
It's just the continental U.S. because of the stability of the sample. We do, I also do finger prick tests of thyroid and thyroid antibodies, and then also urine sampling of heavy metals I look for heavy metal toxicity because a lot of people have thyroid issues, but it can be, it goes undetected by conventional doctors because they only test for TSH and T4. TSH is what comes from your brain to talk to your thyroid and say, hey, make thyroid. And then your thyroid gland makes T4. Then T4 gets on, I'd say it takes an Uber to wherever it needs to go in your body. It hitches a ride with like albumin or another protein, and then it converts to T3 to be used. So a lot of doctors don't know how to test for the conversion. So a lot of people will have blocked conversion due to heavy metals and other toxins.
And I mean, like with the toxins, and you've got the heavy metals, and I know there's a few things I suppose we can kind of heavy metals, mold, and parasites, like because they're all things that we need to get out of our body. And what's the best way people can do that?
Yeah, so I think that okay, so I always tell people to, we all have mold exposures, heavy metal exposures. Be aware of your consumption and exposure, and you can detox. I like to use a company called Bioseed in botanicals for mold because it has a good biofilm disruptor. A lot of people have concomitant mold exposure and a candida overgrowth. So candida is a type, it's in the fungal family, and it's very common to have in the gut for men and women, and women can also have it vaginally. It presents that way. But the problem is like pesticides are made to kill bugs, right? So if you're eating foods that have pesticides, they kill the bugs in your stomach, the good microbiome, so you're not protected. So people, I see more and more, I put men and women on a candida diet while they're detoxing the mold with like a biofilm disruptor. And then, I tell people just sweat as much as you can. It's the best way to get mold out. You can also go get a prescription from a physician called itraconazole. Itraconazole is a really strong drug. You got to monitor your liver with it. I always try to go natural first, but there are instances where people do need a prescription. For example, I'm working with another patient who had breast implant illness, and women with breast implants are prone to having mold build up in their body after. You can test this with a urine test. They look for mycotoxins. So yeah, mold is pervasive, especially because of conventional food. The biggest source of mold, like, do you think it would be air or do you think it would be food? Like,
I would talk. I mean, if we look at, say, the walls, dampness and stuff from breathing it in, that's what I would kind of take it as being the worst one.
That's what everybody would think, but the number one source of mold and mycotoxins is food. It's food because the way they treat, for example, cows that aren't grass-fed, like in the United States, 97% of cows are fed grains. They don't take really good care.
And that's GMO grains as well.
Yeah, it's not. And then it's covered in pesticides, but it's also covered in mold. So these animals eat the mold. The mold is in their tissues. We eat the animal. Any kind of grains, peanuts are horrible. Peanuts are really high in aflatoxins. Aflatoxins are bad for your liver. So it's actually conventional foods are the number one source of mold. I tell people you got to really watch your grains. Go for, I always say gluten-free because it's so inflammatory in this country. But try to reduce your grain consumption and eat organic produce. The pesticides are horrific. And then try to go for grass-fed, free range, not just cage-free, but free-range chickens and stuff like that, because the mold comes from our food. So there's that. And then parasites will hold on to mold too. So I always tell people to do a parasite cleanse a couple times a year. I didn't do one for like 2 years. I'm on like my third month of doing them right now. So we do that always. And then heavy metals. We eat a lot of fish here. So I'm constantly taking herbs for heavy metals like chlorophyll, chlorella, glutathione, selenium. So if you eat, you can probably get your doctor to do a heavy metal panel with your blood work that can usually be covered by insurance. But you can see, like, for every atom of mercury that's in your body, it leaches out 3 glutathione atoms and 2 selenium atoms. So when you've got heavy metals, you want to replenish what's been destroyed by the toxin. So I take that daily too, because I live in Miami and like we eat fish all the time, and fish absorb if a fish is bigger than your plate, it's lived long enough to absorb a lot of toxins. So I know it's unfortunate, but we always need to be thinking about detoxing.
And with like the massive increase in Alzheimer's, I believe that's the heavy metals that are going to the brain is what's the main reason behind that, yeah.
So I mean, that's part of it. Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes. It's diabetes of the brain. It's uncontrolled blood sugar. I was listening to a doctor from Cornell. She had devoted her life to researching Alzheimer's, and then she shifted over to menopause research. And what they found by doing scans of the brain from women, that as their estrogen declines, like even as a woman is going through perimenopause in her 40s, that means she's still getting her period, but maybe only getting it every few months. That's when the amyloid plaques that are characteristic of Alzheimer's start presenting themselves. So they did, in her clinical study, they did MRIs of the brain of a woman who's menstruating monthly, still has sufficient estrogen, progesterone levels, a woman who is in menopause, but taking hormone replacement therapy to make sure that her estrogens and progesterones were at good levels, and then a woman who just did nothing and just suffered with the menopause symptoms. And they found that the brain scan of the woman who had no hormones or lower levels of hormones was completely atrophied. So in the United States, 1 out of 6 Americans will get Alzheimer's, and it's about $100,000 a year to care for somebody with that disease. And the disease is twice as likely to happen to women as men. So that's why this particular researcher started researching it. So just like heart disease kills 1 in 4 men or 1 in 5 women, and breast cancer, 1 in 8 women gets breast cancer. These are all hormone related. We think about sex hormones. They're more than just having sex. They have very important roles in our brain health and the role in maintaining the integrity of our blood vessels. So for both men and women, the estrogen will maintain the endothelial lining. So for example, I'm working with a farmer in Texas right now, and I put him through my protocols, and his testosterone, he's feeling better. He's able to have erections without taking Viagra, which is a win for him, but we retested and he's still not at optimal levels. So I was like, look, what's your pesticide exposure? And, he's still being exposed to pesticides. So I'm going to have to work with him to do really intense detox in order to get everything online, because he's not making enough estrogen and progesterone to protect his blood vessels. Like, my goal is to protect people from dying of a heart attack or dying from a stroke. And so it starts, in midlife. These diseases take 10, 20 years to develop, but you have to address them in midlife in order to truly prevent them.
And with I see the Alzheimer's in Ireland, just with the neighborhood I was in, it's more than 1 in 6. It looks like it's massive. It's just increasing. That is like nearly everyone I know, and I've talked to my mother, well, she's got it now, and it's so I think the numbers are actually worse. It's scary. Yeah, but I'm not sure about in Poland, because I wouldn't be talking to people like that. But in Ireland, the cholesterol, they were all putting people on the cholesterol levels, because 1, it's a patient per life, 2, they're getting the kickback. But unfortunately, then there's the side effect, and it's just a chain reaction. And I'm coming across people they're on 20 meds and everything, and it's so sad that and I think people have to stop kind of putting their trust in the doctors, because there's genuine doctors like yourself. There's a lot out there that are really trying to help. But I've seen so many cases where even somebody figures out a way themselves how to heal themselves. They go to their doctor, and their doctor goes, "Good job," and then they just prescribe the exact same thing to the next person with the same ailments. And it's it's kind of sad that it's kind of like that. So people have to kind of look after themselves to be kind of, but I suppose the main thing is what I'm touching on there is the chain reaction with all these meds. And there's no testing done with a combination of a concoction of 20 meds.
You're right. That's the reductionist model. All the clinical studies are done on single interventions with no confounding variables. exactly. Because that's the way the body functions. We're like a symphony, and a doctor only wants to look at the violin.
So your book, then, you might tell people what exactly you're covering. I mean, a lot of it is probably what we've covered.
Yeah, no, we haven't talked about it at all. 7X method. I was traveling by myself in 2020. I went to Central America to get dentistry done at a biological dentist because it's in the United States. It was like 30 grand to get done what I wanted done. And I was like, that's just a little crazy. So I have friends there's a lot of people in the US moving as expats in Central America. It's a trend here. Can't afford to retire here. So I stayed with my friend, and he's like, oh man, you got to meet this guy in town. You guys are always talking about energy. And I was like, you guys would so I meet him, and he's a liaison for this quantic medicine program in Guadalajara, Mexico. And they don't really want Americans knowing about this, but there's a little healing center. Yeah, they don't want us to screw it up. There's a little healing center where they're healing people from cancer using food as medicine. Like, people go in with all these biomarkers of illness, and after 30 days or 60 days of this food regimen, they do juicing, and it has to do with the sun and the moon, they're better. So there's like 12 books that they're transcribed from Spanish to English, and I got through like some of the first one. So I only have the basic timed eating disease prevention protocols, but I started eating that way. And like I said, I had been so sick from that antibiotic. I had tons of food allergies. Like, a lot of my food sensitivities went away. I used to be like, I could never fall asleep before midnight unless I had a fever, and I started sleeping at like 10 o'clock and waking up with the sunrise. I used to need 3 alarms to wake up my entire life. So I was like, wow, like my stomach feels better. I can eat more foods that I used to be allergic to. I'm like, there's really something to this. So I started bringing it into my coaching program, and I'd made like a little diet plan, a meal plan, a 7-day reset. People sign on with me and they want to get started right away, but I have to order the labs. The labs have to go to their house. So while they're waiting for that, we jump right in with the 7X method, and we start with the eating plan. And they're like, oh my God, I lost a pant size in a week. And so they stay on it, and like, oh my God, my carpal tunnel went away. I don't have to go to my chiropractor anymore. Or like, these rashes go away. Like, it's the basic principle is there's no such thing as calories. There's no such thing as fat grams. There's no such thing as proteins. There's no such thing as calories. There's no counting. So the energetic qualities of food are based on in mathematics, we call it discrete data instead of continuous data. Continuous data is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? The longer I'm on Earth, the older I am, the more years I am, the bigger I am, the more pounds I weigh, right? It's continuous data and goes in numerical sequence. Well, they based it on discrete data. Discrete data in mathematics means data that can be grouped into sets based on its characteristics. So like an apple, grapes, banana, those are all fruits, right? Tomatoes, carrots, whatever, those are vegetables. Well, I don't know if tomatoes are fruit or a vegetable, but it's debatable. Or like, a pit bull, a poodle, a Rottweiler, those are all dogs. So they've divided food into 7 groups based on this, and it's based on the circadian rhythm of your organs and systems. We have our main circadian rhythm, which is our sleep-wake cycle, where, in response to light, the pineal gland stops making melatonin, and 30 minutes later, your adrenal glands give a big burst of cortisol, so you're on with your day. So that sets the pace for all your other peripheral clocks in your body. The circadian rhythms of your organs and systems are grouped by like systems, and so there's 7 different food groups, 7 groups of organs and systems, and they all want certain foods at certain times of day, because it's all based on the energetic frequency of the food and the need of that organ or system. Does that make sense?
No, definitely. And I mean, like, the thing is with that, like, there's that, and there's so many different places for healing. A lot is, I hear, in Mexico, but like, it's either, if somebody creates something, they're either shut down by the FDA, who is basically controlled, and whoever works for the FDA end up working for Big Pharma, which in itself is a kind of conflict of interest. And like the big pharma gives half their money towards the FDA, which is another conflict of interest, and how that's allowed is kind of a bit frustrating. But you see a lot of people, they create something, they disappear, or else they buy it and they never use it. And that's on so many things, not just medicine, but it's on kind of energy as well. And it's like
human nature, yeah.
But like, yeah, energy we get, but we're talking about people's lives, and it must be frustrating, and the fact that you've been in a hospital and everything, that you know that this could be a million times better, but it's orchestrated that it's not.
Mm-hmm. I know, it's a shame. I'm trying to bring back the power of plant medicine.
And like this is one as well, that antidepressants. I mean, I remember, I don't know what book I was reading. I mean, I read 100 books, but it was like the side effects is suicidal tendencies. And, when I kind of saw it, I was like, so like, unfortunately, the way there's a lot of people living in fear at the moment, and even financially and everything, it leads to depression. And with the 4 years of craziness that we had all taken out of our lives, there was so much fighting going on in-house, just because one, partners weren't used to spending so much time together, or else they had different belief systems. And then a lot of people then started going on to the depression tablets. So maybe just finally, you might just touch on that, like that, the dangers of kind of antidepressants.
Well, before I decided to be a physical therapist, because I love biochemistry, I'm really good at organic chemistry. There's no calculators, you just draw pictures. So I was thinking of being a pharmacist. So I did some shadowing at a compounding pharmacy in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And it was I spent one afternoon there. I couldn't believe how many people were on Xanax. Like, that's the benzodiazepine that's for anti-anxiety. Like, unbelievable amounts of Xanax. And yeah, there's a lot of antidepressants too. Antidepressant use goes up for women as they go through menopause because, like I said, doctors are not trained in menopause, and they don't realize the interrelationship between hormones and brain chemistry. So when hormones are not properly managed, the brain chemicals fluctuate. So a woman feels like she's going crazy, and the doctor's like, oh, it's all in your head, and they just slap on an antidepressant, but that's not getting the root cause. I do, like I said, I do urine panels of brain chemistry. So I see a lot of brains, and I can see the effects of long-term poor nutrition, lack of vitamin and mineral deficiency. So your brain needs certain vitamins, certain minerals, and it needs to have certain enzymes producing things in order to make these brain chemicals. So just taking an antidepressant doesn't address the root cause. I help people get off antidepressants. Like, for example, I mean, they all have side effects. And I had this woman who, she was in her 60s, and she'd been on this antidepressant since she was 50 because the doctor gave it to her when she went into menopause because he didn't know what to do with her. But she was getting all the side effects, and it was supposed to be a serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor, and it was doing nothing for her norepinephrine. Like, she still felt awful, wasn't getting the results she wanted, but she was getting the side effects. So we titrated down slowly. Like a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, that's a lot easier to titrate off of. When you do serotonin and norepinephrine, it can be a little tricky. So I offer on my phone, I have a WhatsApp channel just for my coaching clients. And sometimes I have to talk to them like 2-3 times a day as they're pulling off of these antidepressants and replacing it with vitamins and minerals and high doses of just natural substances. But it can be done, and that addresses the root cause, because the root cause is, your genetics load the gun, but your environment and your lifestyle pulls the trigger. So if we can look at the genetics and then adjust the lifestyle, we can kind of reverse that and help people feel better naturally without all the side effects. The big thing with SSRIs is, not being able to have an orgasm, and that's pretty horrible way to live. Like, I don't know, it's probably one of the best gifts that God gave us. So to not have that in itself is depressing to me. I don't know about you, but so the main thing is that they're just slapping a Band-Aid on a symptom and not looking at the root cause.
Yes, thoroughly enjoy it. You might let people know when they actually get involved, what you do, how, the coaching or the course or whatever that you're doing, and then how they can reach you as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel too, but I'm more active on Instagram. It's just like the title of my book, 7X Method. And my website is DrSarahDoyle.com, DrSarahDoyle.com. You can book a call with me, or you can, if you have questions, just find me on Instagram and DM me. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions and help guide you. I do a 10-week bootcamp, like I said. As we enroll, I place orders for all these lab tests to go to your house. We start with the 7X method. We start eating, and then I have a weekly mastermind. I meet at 7 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday, and I teach about a subject, and I open it up for Q&A. I have an online masterclass library of all the content that we talk about. So the reason people are successful is because we meet for at least 10 weeks. Sometimes most of my clients love it, and they'll stay on for like 15 or even 20 weeks because they find so much power in it. And it's kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy in a way. Like, we teach people behavioral changes. They learn something, they get to implement it every week. Like I said, I'm always accessible. It's life-changing for people. So a lot, the people like GAT have tried other programs and failed. They feel kind of hopeless. They just, they haven't gotten the results they wanted, or they've been, trying to piece it together, listening to influencers on social media like TikTok docs and trying to figure it out because their mainstream doctor can't help them. So it's, I want people to know there's options out there. And, I only take on maximum 20 clients a month so that I can give a good level of care. So that's important to me because I've listened, my competition would be like Gary Brecka from the 10X Health System. And I was listening to him being interviewed by that British guy, Diary of a CEO. And he said, what was the one thing that you didn't like about, getting so big? And he's like, I lost that personal touch. I can't meet with people one-on-one. And then that's not what I don't want to get so big that everybody knows me and I hire random people to take care of people. Like, I don't want to lose that personal touch. And I think that's the biggest value I can give to people is they have an ally. They have someone that's going to make sure they're successful.
I believe you've a discount code for the listeners as well.
Oh, yes, I do. It is Awakening 2000, Awakening 2000 with a capital A.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a $2,000 discount. We're doing a summer special here. If you go on my website, you'll see it's $5,000. That includes everything except your supplements, because that's different for everybody. It's a personalized plan of care. Yeah, I should say you do get a one-on-one consult with me too. It's not just group meeting, but we do a one-on-one. We get all your test results back and we look at your history, your life, and you get a personalized plan of care. It's not just an AI algorithm. I get clients that have done my function health with Mark Hyman, Cleveland Clinic, or my Life Force, the one that Tony Robbins and Andrew Huberman are endorsing. And that's their main complaint. They're like, I did these tests and they sent me an email, but I don't know what to do. So I get clients from these other big names all the time. And so that's the main thing. You get a one-on-one with me, and then you get to continue to connect with me until you're successful.
Oh, excellent. So Sarah, I'll make sure I'll put all the links and the code both on the audio and the video. Thank you very much for a lovely call. Thank you. So that's all for the Awakening podcast. You'll find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends, and comment on what we discussed. Until next week, take care. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. As mentioned at the start, you can find my 6 podcasts on roycollin.com or scan the QR code if you're looking to start a podcast or do a podcasting tour, help with that. Also, if you're looking for a virtual assistant, we also have that service. And you can help the show by visiting the store, supporting our sponsors, or making a donation. Until next week, take care.